This is Santre Sanchez Gayle, a 15-year-old London schoolboy who executed a young mother on her own doorstep. His price? A measly £200, which he would later spend on a Dolce & Gabbana beanie hat. But what led a 15-year-old schoolboy to carry out a contract killing on an unsuspecting young mother? To understand this, we need to delve deeper into the background of the young assassin and uncover what shaped and molded Sanchez Gayle into a cold-blooded contract killer. Known as Riot on the streets, Sanchez Gayle was already making a name for himself with a notorious northwest London street gang known as the KGB, or the Kensal Green Boys. The Kensal Green Boys got their name from robbing commuters on the Kensal Green train line. KGB gang members would deliberately pass through Kensal Green train station, boarding trains to rob innocent civilians of their possessions, such as money, phones, and other valuables. There were also multiple incidents where KGB members assaulted and stabbed innocent people for their own twisted amusement. Sanchez Gayle found acceptance and a sense of belonging within his gang, committing robberies and various other petty crimes to impress the older members. His family life at home, however, was virtually non-existent. You see, Sanchez Gayle's biological family was far from typical. In fact, he wasn't the only murderer in his household, but we'll get to that later. Santre's victim was 26-year-old mother of one, Gulistan Subasi, a Turkish national who had returned to London in hopes of seeing her son on his 9th birthday. At this point, you're probably wondering, what does a 15-year-old street thug have to do with a 26-year-old Turkish mother? How did their paths cross in a way that would ultimately lead to murder? To answer this, we need to introduce another key piece of the puzzle. We need to talk about the Iceman. Isaac Billy, also known as the Iceman, was a 21-year-old senior member of the Kensal Green Boys who recruited Santre to carry out the hit on Gulistan Subasi. Seen here on CCTV, the Iceman can be observed leading Santre to the home of Gulistan's mother, where Gulistan was staying while in London. It is understood that the Iceman was originally hired to carry out the hit and was paid £2,000, of which he agreed to give Santre just £200 to be the triggerman. Once Santre was shown the home and its surroundings, the plan was set in motion. It is believed that the Iceman provided Santre with a sawn-off shotgun to carry out the hit. Later that night, Santre returned to the scene, taking a taxi to Gulistan Subasi's mother's house. CCTV footage captures him ringing the doorbell and calmly waiting. Moments pass as he reaches into his bag and pulls out the sawn-off shotgun. Patiently, he waits. Inside the home, Gulistan and her mother were having dinner when they heard the doorbell. Gulistan, hopeful that a member of her estranged husband's family had brought her son to see her on the eve of his 9th birthday, got up to answer the door. Her mother pleaded, "No, daughter, we don't know who's at the door, I will answer it." But Gulistan didn't listen. Excited, she rushed to the door expecting to see her young son. Instead, she was met by Santre holding a sawn-off shotgun to her chest. Without hesitation, he fired at point-blank range before fleeing the scene. Off camera, Santre ran back to the taxi which had been waiting for him around the corner. The taxi driver later testified in court. Santre appeared completely normal when he got back into my taxi. Nothing seemed off about him whatsoever. When you think about it, this chilling detail speaks volumes. Even at such a young age, Santre was already a cold, calculating killer. Gulistan was left with a fist-sized wound in the center of her chest. Her mother rushed to her side, but there was nothing she could do. Gulistan died in her mother's arms. The job was done. Santre had carried out the hit, and Gulistan was out of the picture. But who wanted her dead? Who had paid the Iceman £2,000 to take Gulistan's life? That will all become clear a little later on in the video. A major manhunt was launched to find Gulistan's killer. After reviewing the CCTV footage, police initially believed they were dealing with a professional assassin. Detective Chief Inspector Jackie Seebier was quoted saying, "When we saw the CCTV, we all thought it was a professional hitman. There was no hesitation and he shows no nerves." Initially, police were baffled by the murder. Detective Inspector Chalmers admitted, "We absolutely did not have a clue. We were at a dead end." However, the teenage killer couldn't keep quiet. Police received information that the Iceman had been threatening to kill a teenager named Ryan Hatunga. Hatunga was brought into the police station to give a statement and told investigators that the Iceman had threatened to shoot him because he knew about the murder of a Turkish woman. Hatunga then made a statement that Santre had confessed to carrying out the shooting and that he had been taken there by taxi, and that a security grille covered the door of the victim's flat. Detective Inspector Chalmers said, "When I heard about the security grille, I knew only the killer could have known about that. We had never revealed that to the general public." In a second statement, Hatunga revealed that Santre had told him he was paid just £200 for the hit. However, Detective Inspector Chalmers remarked, "I think he thought he was going to get more money for it. My gut feeling is that the money was an element, but there must have been a lot of peer pressure, kudos, and an attempt to impress older members of the gang." Speaking on Santre, he said, "He is not a very bright lad. He did not have good schooling or much parental control. He was easily manipulated. In many ways, he himself is a victim." It's an interesting perspective from the chief inspector. Do you see Santre as a victim, a young child who was easily led or even groomed, or is he just another cold-blooded killer, a product of the harsh environment of gang-ridden London? Remember earlier in the video, we touched on Santre's home life and the fact that he wasn't even the only murderer in his household. As it turns out, he comes from a family of killers. His half-brother, Loiwen Carty, was sentenced in December 2006 to a minimum of 30 years for the murder of 27-year-old Lee Subaran, who was shot dead at the famous Notting Hill Carnival. Subaran was gunned down at point-blank range, shot in the neck and chest, after allegedly showing disrespect to another gang member, Leon Roberts, who was a close associate of Santre's brother. Next up in the family tree of psychopathic gangsters is Santre's cousin, Donald Carty, another member of the Kensal Green Boys. On January 12, 2006, Donald Carty and his co-defendant, Delano Brown, brutally stabbed city lawyer Tom A.P. Rees-Price through the heart while mugging him as he stepped out of Kensal Green Tube Station. Witnesses reported seeing Price running along Bathurst Gardens, pursued by two young men. According to testimony from Delano Brown, Donald Carty stabbed Price after they had chased him from the station, where police later discovered a trail of blood and scattered belongings, including a pair of gloves and documents related to Price's wedding arrangements. As the chase continued, Carty fly-kicked Price in the back, causing him to fall to the ground. When Price attempted to get back up, Carty kicked him in the face. In a desperate attempt to escape, Price fought back, but Carty overpowered him. During the struggle, Price was stabbed twice in the chest and once in the hip, with the wounds penetrating vital organs, including his heart. He also suffered multiple cuts to his head, hands and torso. Carty and Brown stole his mobile phone and Oyster card, the only valuables he had on him at the time. Carty then demanded, "What else have you got?" To which Price, now gravely wounded, responded, "Nothing, you have got everything." The two attackers then fled towards Clifford Gardens, heading to Carty's home, leaving Price dying on the ground. He was later taken to Central Middlesex Hospital, where he was pronounced dead shortly after midnight. For their roles in the murder, Carty was sentenced to 21 years, while Brown received 17 years. Now, let's get back to Santre and address the massive blood-soaked elephant in the room. Who hired the Iceman to carry out the hit on Gulistan Subasi, and why would someone want her dead? Gulistan was in an ongoing custody battle for her son with her estranged husband Serdar Ozbek. Gulistan was due to remarry in Turkey later that summer and had mentioned regaining full custody of her son. Gulistan's husband was reportedly infuriated by the suggestion and that he had orchestrated the hit to save face. In the days leading up to her murder, Gulistan had received several threatening phone calls from Serdar Ozbek, who was on holiday in Turkey at the time. Detective Inspector Andy Chalmers, who led the investigation into Subasi's murder, highlighted a concerning pattern observed by North London detectives. He stated, "The role of the teenager has exposed a trend in which Turkish gangs use young black men to carry out their hits. The hitman in this case was the fourth young black man to be used in this way in 12 months, according to police sources. In each case, a young black man has been hired to carry out a killing. In the case of this 15-year-old boy, he's been used, his life is ruined. He was a vulnerable, damaged, easily manipulated and impressionable teenager, and they used him because he was disposable and not connected to them in any way." When the case went to trial, Serdar Ozbek was accused of orchestrating the hit on his wife through his brother, Hussein Ozbek. However, Hussein left the UK shortly before the trial and remained beyond the reach of British authorities. Throughout the trial, Serdar consistently denied any involvement in Gulistan's murder. The jury ultimately found him not guilty, along with two other alleged middlemen, 25-year-old Lee Bryan and 29-year-old Paul Nicolau. However, the evidence against Santre Sanchez Gayle and Isaac Billy, aka the Iceman, was overwhelming. Both were found guilty of murder. Santre was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 20 years, while the Iceman received a life sentence with a minimum of 22 years. Was Santre Sanchez Gayle always destined to follow in the footsteps of his murderous family? Was Santre simply a product of an increasingly morally bankrupt generation of young people in England's biggest towns and cities? Was Santre doomed from the start due to his genetics and family history? Or was he simply a vulnerable child, shaped and manipulated by his surroundings? The answer likely lies somewhere in between. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and as always, stay paranoid.